In the heart of central Italy, long before the Roman Empire cast its shadow across the land, there lived a people whose names we now speak in hushed academic tones. The Etruscans. They were not a single kingdom nor a single tribe, but a web of cities, cultures, and sacred customs, bound by language, by ritual, and by the deep reverence they held for space, direction, and the boundaries between things. Tonight, we drift gently into their world, a world of measured gestures and softly sung invocations, of furrowed ground and sacred chords, where space was not only drawn, it was blessed. Let us begin slowly with their first and most profound idea, that the land must be ordered, not with conquest, but with ceremony. The Etruscans believed that land, before it could be used, must be purified, not only of weeds or stones, but of chaos. They called this ordering of space limes, a Latin word later adopted by the Romans, but whose spiritual bones were Etruscan. A limes was not just a border, it was a line between sacred and profane, between life and afterlife, between ours and theirs. And so, to draw such lines, they did not merely walk the perimeter. They performed a ritual, measured, deliberate, and deeply bound to their gods. Let us walk slowly now through this ancient rite. Before any ceremony could begin, the augur, the priest of signs, would rise before dawn. He would wash his hands in running water and dress in clean linen robes, white as the sky before sunrise. In silence, he would approach the tools of his office, the liturgus for reading the skies, a sacred plow for trench cutting, and a bundle of wooden stakes, each carved with quiet symbols. Beside him stood the templum, not a building but a mental space, a rectangle drawn in the air with his liturgus. It faced the cardinal directions. It oriented his mind to the will of the gods. With slow steps, he paced this imagined rectangle, murmuring invocations to Tinia, the sky god, and to Sel, goddess of the earth below. He was not alone. From the village came others, helpers, apprentices, and a landowner. Together, they walked in silence, bringing rope, baskets of grain, and a small lyre, an instrument for the hymn. The sun now barely above the horizon. The ritual could begin. With solemn focus, the augur led a sacred ox and cow, yoked together. He spoke softly to them, never commanding, only guiding. And behind them, the earth opened, not violently, but rhythmically, a single, continuous trench, perhaps no wider than a man's foot, curling around the property like a bracelet. This trench was not just physical, it was an offering. The soil turned in reverence, outward, never inward, to show that nothing within was cursed. All evil was turned away. At every corner they paused, each angle marked by a wooden stake, gently tapped into place with a mallet carved from olive wood. And as the trench progressed, the stakes were placed at regular intervals, each one marked with an incised symbol, a sunburst, a spiral, or the sacred letters of an ancient tongue few today can read. Then came the grain. The earth had been disturbed. It was polite and necessary to apologize. From their baskets, the helpers took barley, spelt, and grape must, and gently poured them into the trench at each stake. The scent of the crushed grain mixed with the smell of the newly turned soil. The augur would chant softly, words in an old dialect, something like, Tinia, Sel, protect this place. Let boundary be clarity, not conflict. Let what lies within be clean. Let what lies beyond remain where it is. His tone did not rise. It was not a song of triumph, but of grounding. And over time, the boundary became not only real, but sacred. Let's linger here for a moment and imagine how many generations marked land this way. How many hands traced the same line? How many boundaries were drawn not in haste, but with prayer? Even in their silence, the Etruscans wove sound into ceremony. They believed the gods heard best when spoken to in rhythm, in tone, and through song. As the boundary trench neared completion, a pause was taken. The workers, the landowner, the augur, they gathered in a half circle. And from the lyre came a melody, slow, repetitive, like breath. No audience, no applause. The song was not for men. It was for the land. The lyrics, few that survive, spoke not of conquest or dominion, but of harmony, of the gods who watched the skies, of the spirits who wandered the forests, and of the quiet pact being made between humans and earth. The melody was never hurried. Like a lullaby for the land itself, the song settled into the soil. You may wonder, could the earth remember? Did it carry the song deep into its roots? The Etruscans believed so, and perhaps on some quiet hillside in Tuscany, you may still hear echoes. The boundary was marked in more than furrows. Each stake and each cornerstone had meaning. Some were made of cypress, others of ash or oak. Each tree held significance. Cypress for the underworld, ash for strength, oak for endurance. At the base of some stakes, a small stone was buried. Flat, cool to the touch. It served as a memory anchor, so that even if the stake was removed, the land would remember. Some stakes bore no carvings, but others were painted with red ochre or wrapped in threads of white wool. Why wool? Because wool was pure, untouched by iron or fire, a gift of the living to the gods. You may imagine, under the moonlight, those stakes glowing softly like sentinels, their lines straight but never harsh, their purpose clear but never boastful. The land had been spoken to, and it had answered, not with words, but with stillness. Once the last stake was placed and the final offering given, there was no fanfare. The augur would return to the center of the field, where the templum had been marked at dawn. There, he would raise his liturus once more, not to begin, but to close. He traced the air slowly, a quiet loop to seal the rite. A final chant was whispered, not to announce completion, but to dissolve the ritual space back into the ordinary world. The gods have been heard. The earth has accepted. What was drawn in sacred shape now lives among us. The people departed in silence. No wine, no feast, only the cool peace of a well-drawn line. And in the days to come, no one stepped over it lightly, not because of fear, but out of respect. For the land was no longer just land. It was a living shape, bound by ritual, blessed by purpose. The Etruscans did not forget what they had drawn. Each year, often at the start of the planting season, the family or the village would return to the line. Some brought their children, others brought fresh offerings. They would walk the same path, touch each stake, speak a short phrase. This remains. Sometimes the stakes had worn away. Sometimes the trench had softened with rain. Still, they redrew it, not always with plows, but with steps, with words, with presence. The line was not policed. It was remembered. You might think of it like a whispered lullaby, sung again each year so it wouldn't be forgotten. Over time, these rituals shaped not only land, but thought, the idea of sacred space, of rightful place, would carry into Roman law. The Romans borrowed much. The augur's tools, the trench, even the lichus. They call their sacred lines pomerium, and they too believed that no weapon should cross it. But while the Romans expanded, the Etruscans remembered. They whispered to their hills and trusted their lines. And so tonight, you too may imagine that space can be more than geometry, that boundaries can be gentle, that marking a place can be a form of gratitude. The Etruscans left few words, but they left lines, and in those quiet lines, drawn in furrow and stake, we find a story not of power, but of care. Let it lull you now, like footsteps in the grass, like songs you've never heard but somehow remember. Rest now. The line is drawn. The land is safe. The ceremony is complete.